My name is Rebecca, and I'm 34 years old. 3 weeks ago, I was sitting in the front row of Northwestern University's medical school graduation ceremony, wearing the navy blue dress I'd bought specifically for this moment, watching the man I'd supported through 8 years of medical training receive his diploma, Dr. Marcus Chen, my boyfriend of 6 years, the man I'd moved to Chicago for, the man I'd worked 2 jobs to support while he focused on his studies. The graduation ceremony was everything Marcus had dreamed it would be, held in the grand auditorium at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, with families filling every seat and cameras flashing as each new doctor crossed the stage. I'd been so proud watching him walk across that stage in his cap and gown, knowing how many sacrifices we'd both made to reach this moment. Marcus had been chosen to give the student speaker address, an honor reserved for graduates with exceptional academic performance and leadership qualities. For 20 minutes, he spoke eloquently about dedication, perseverance, and the importance of having supportive people in your life who believe in your dreams even when they seem impossible. Success in medicine requires more than individual talent, Marcus had said, his voice carrying clearly through the auditorium's sound system. It requires a network of people who support you through the difficult moments, who sacrifice their own comfort for your advancement, and who believe in your potential even when you doubt yourself. I'd felt tears welling up in my eyes as he spoke, thinking about all the late nights I'd worked double shifts as a nurse at Chicago General while Marcus studied for exams, the dinners I'd skipped so we could afford his textbooks, the social events I'd missed because Marcus needed quiet time to prepare for clinical rotations. To everyone who has supported the graduating class of 2024, Marcus continued, thank you for your patience, your understanding, and your unwavering belief in our mission to heal and to serve. The audience had erupted in applause, and I'd felt a surge of pride knowing that I was part of the support system Marcus was acknowledging. We'd talked about this moment for years, how after graduation, he'd start his residency at Northwestern Memorial, and we'd finally be able to build the life together that we'd been postponing while he completed his medical training. After the ceremony, families and graduates mingled in the hospital's main lobby, taking photos and celebrating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I'd made my way through the crowd to congratulate Marcus, who was surrounded by classmates and faculty members praising his speech. Rebecca, Marcus had said when he saw me approaching, his smile bright and genuine. Did you hear the speech? I think it went well. It was perfect, I'd said, meaning every word. I'm so proud of you, Marcus. We did it. Marcus had pulled me into a hug, and for a moment, everything felt exactly as I'd imagined it would. 6 years of sacrifice and support had led to this moment, the beginning of our real life together, with financial stability, professional respect, and the future we'd been planning since he'd started medical school. That's when he'd whispered in my ear, his voice so quiet that only I could hear it. We're done. The words didn't register immediately. The noise of the celebration, the excitement of the moment, the champagne I'd had on an empty stomach, all of it created a surreal bubble where those 2 words seemed impossible. What? I'd whispered back, still holding him, still smiling for the cameras I could see pointed in our direction. We're done, Rebecca, Marcus repeated, his voice still soft but unmistakably clear. I'm starting my residency, and I need to focus on my career now. We've grown apart, and I think it's time for both of us to move on. The irony was breathtaking. Marcus was ending our relationship at his graduation ceremony, surrounded by hundreds of people who had just heard him speak about the importance of supportive partners, while hugging the woman who had made his education financially possible. I felt like I'd been slapped, but I was trapped in the embrace, surrounded by people taking photos and recording videos of Marcus's graduation celebration. I couldn't react the way I wanted to react. I couldn't scream, cry, or walk away without creating a scene that would be captured on dozens of phones and shared across social media. Marcus, I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. You can't be serious. Not here, not now. I am serious, he whispered back, his voice taking on a tone I'd never heard before. Cold, clinical, detached. Rebecca, you've been a great support system, but I'm starting a new chapter of my life. I need to be free to focus entirely on my residency and my career. The word support system hit me like a physical blow. That's what I was to him. Not a partner, not someone he loved, but a support system that had served its purpose and was now being discarded. You're breaking up with me at your graduation? I whispered, still maintaining the smile that the cameras required. I'm being honest about where things stand, Marcus replied. I thought you'd prefer to know sooner rather than later. What I preferred was not being blindsided at a public event after 6 years of relationship and financial sacrifice. What I preferred was having this conversation in private, like adults who respected each other enough to handle difficult situations with dignity. But as I stood there, trapped in Marcus's arms while cameras flashed around us, I realized that dignity had never been part of his plan. He'd chosen this moment deliberately. A public setting where I couldn't react emotionally, where I'd be forced to maintain composure while he delivered the news that would shatter the future we'd been building together. "Rebecca, say something," Marcus whispered, apparently expecting me to graciously accept his decision and play along with the happy graduation narrative he was presenting to the crowd. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of whispering back, instead of maintaining the quiet conversation he'd initiated, I spoke loudly enough for everyone around us to hear clearly. "You're breaking up with me? Here? Now? After I worked 2 jobs for 6 years to put you through medical school?" The effect was immediate and devastating. The conversations around us stopped mid-sentence. Cameras that had been capturing happy graduation moments suddenly focused on the drama unfolding in the center of the crowd. Marcus's face went pale as he realized that his private breakup had just become very public. "Rebecca, please," Marcus said, his voice still low but audible to the dozen people who had turned to stare at us. "Let's not make a scene." "A scene?" I replied, my voice carrying across the lobby. "You just told me we're done while hugging me at your graduation, and you're worried about a scene?" Dr. E. Patricia Williams, the dean of students who had introduced Marcus for his speech, approached us with concern evident on her face. "Is everything all right here?" "Everything's perfect," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Dr. Chen was just explaining to me how my 6 years of financial support were a great stepping stone for his career, but now that he's graduated, he needs to focus on his residency and doesn't need a girlfriend anymore. The crowd around us had grown larger, and I could see phones being raised to record what was obviously becoming a social media moment. Marcus looked mortified, probably realizing that his professional reputation was about to be seriously damaged by his personal decisions. "Rebecca, you're upset," Marcus said, trying to regain control of the situation. "Maybe we should talk about this privately." "Oh, now you want to talk privately?" I replied. "After choosing to break up with me in front of 300 people? That's interesting timing, Marcus." Dr. Williams was clearly trying to figure out how to diffuse the situation without making it worse. "Perhaps you two should step outside and have this conversation away from the celebration." "Actually, Dr. Williams," I said, turning to address her directly, "I think this conversation is very relevant to the celebration." Dr. Chen just finished giving a beautiful speech about the importance of supportive partners and the sacrifices that other people make for medical students' success. I gestured around the crowd, many of whom were still recording with their phones. "And now he's demonstrating exactly how medical professionals show gratitude to the people who made their education possible." Marcus was frantically trying to signal me to stop talking, but I was just getting started. 6 years of suppressed frustrations, financial stress, and emotional sacrifice were finally finding their voice. "You know what the beautiful irony is?" I continued, addressing the crowd that had gathered around us. 20 minutes ago, Dr. Chen told all of you how important it is to have people in your life who believe in your dreams, even when they seem impossible. And you know what? He was right. I did believe in his dreams. I believed in them so much that I worked 60-hour weeks to pay for his living expenses while he studied. I believed in them so much that I postponed my own career advancement so he could focus on his education. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. I could see some of Marcus's classmates exchanging uncomfortable glances, probably recognizing similarities to their own relationships. "And apparently," I said, my voice becoming stronger and more confident, "Dr. Chen's dreams have come true. He's achieved everything he wanted, except he forgot to mention in his speech that achieving your dreams sometimes requires throwing away the people who helped you achieve them." Marcus tried one more time to stop me. "Rebecca, please. You're embarrassing yourself." That's when I smiled. Really smiled, for the first time since he'd whispered those devastating words. "Oh, Marcus," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm not the one who should be embarrassed." And then I told the crowd exactly what they needed to know about the man they'd just been celebrating. The silence in Northwestern Memorial Hospital's lobby was so complete that I could hear the hum of the air conditioning system and the distant sound of traffic from the street outside. 300 people, graduates, family members, faculty, and hospital staff, were all focused on me, waiting to hear what I was about to say about the man they just celebrated as their outstanding student speaker. "You want to know what Dr. Marcus Chen didn't mention in his beautiful speech about sacrifice and support?" I said, my voice carrying clearly across the marble lobby. "Let me fill in some of the details he left out." Marcus was staring at me with a mixture of horror and disbelief, probably realizing that his attempt to quietly end our relationship had just become the most public breakup in Northwestern medical school history. 6 years ago, when Marcus started medical school, We made what I thought was a partnership decision, I continued, addressing the crowd as if I were giving a presentation. I would support us financially while he focused on his studies. I was working as a registered nurse making decent money, and it seemed like a reasonable plan. I could see people nodding in the crowd, family members who had made similar sacrifices for their own medical students, classmates who recognized the financial challenges of medical education. What Marcus didn't mention in his speech, I said, is that financial support meant I worked double shifts at Chicago General Hospital while he studied. It meant I picked up extra weekend shifts so we could afford his textbooks, which cost more than most people's monthly rent. Marcus tried to interrupt. Rebecca, this isn't— Oh, I'm not finished, I said firmly. Dr. Williams, you might find this educational. Marcus didn't just receive financial support, he received what you might call a full-service educational sponsorship. Dr. Williams was looking increasingly uncomfortable, but she seemed unable to leave or intervene without making the situation worse. While Marcus was studying for the MCAT, I was working night shifts and coming home to cook his meals, do his laundry, and maintain our apartment so he could have the quiet environment he needed for optimal concentration, I continued. I turned to address Marcus's classmates directly. How many of you had to work part-time jobs during medical school to help cover your expenses? Several hands went up reluctantly. Marcus didn't, I said, because I was working full-time to cover all of our living expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, insurance, everything, for 4 years of medical school. Rebecca, you're making this sound. Marcus started again. I'm making this sound exactly like what it was, I interrupted. A complete financial and domestic support system that allowed Dr. Chen to graduate debt-free, while I accumulated $23,000 in credit card debt covering our living expenses during the months when my nursing income wasn't quite enough. The crowd was getting restless, and I could see some people looking at Marcus with expressions that ranged from disappointment to disgust. But wait, I said, warming to my theme. There's more. When Marcus started his clinical rotations, the support system expanded to include transportation services. Since the hospital schedules were unpredictable, and Marcus needed to focus on his medical training rather than worry about logistics, I would drive him to and from the hospital whenever my own work schedule allowed. That was your choice, Marcus said, his voice becoming defensive. Nobody forced you to do any of those things. You're absolutely right, Marcus. I agreed. It was my choice. And you know why I made that choice? Because I believed we were building a life together. I believed that when you graduated and started earning a doctor's salary, we would finally be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, showing the screen to Dr. Williams and several nearby faculty members. Would you like to see what 6 years of supporting a medical student looks like financially? I asked. Here's my checking account balance, $437. Here's my savings account, $0. Here's my credit card debt, $23,412. The numbers had a visible impact on the crowd. Several people gasped, and I could see Marcus's classmates doing mental calculations about their own financial situations. Dr. E. Williams, I said, when you give financial aid presentations to incoming medical students, do you mention that some students solve their financial challenges by finding partners willing to bankrupt themselves for love? Dr. Williams was clearly at a loss for how to respond to my question, but she didn't need to answer because I wasn't finished. The really beautiful part, I continued, is that Marcus has been planning this breakup for months. Want to know how I know that? Marcus's face went even paler, if that was possible. 3 weeks ago, Marcus asked me to help him open a new bank account for his residency salary. He said it would be easier to manage his finances as a doctor if he had accounts separate from our shared expenses. Seemed reasonable, right? I pulled out a piece of paper from my purse, a bank statement I'd printed that morning when I'd finally gotten suspicious about Marcus's recent behavior. Except Marcus didn't just open a checking account for his residency salary. He opened a complete banking relationship, checking, savings, and investment accounts, and transferred every penny from our joint emergency fund into his personal accounts. The crowd was becoming agitated now, and I could hear murmurs of disapproval directed at Marcus. $4,000, I announced. Money we had saved together, money I had contributed to from my nursing salary, money that was supposed to be our emergency fund for unexpected expenses during his residency. Rebecca, that money was— Marcus started. That money was stolen, I said flatly, because you took it while letting me believe we were still planning a future together. Dr. Williams finally found her voice. Perhaps this conversation should really be continued privately. Dr. Williams, with respect. This conversation is exactly where it should be, I replied, because Dr. Chen chose to end our relationship publicly, at a celebration where he gave a speech about the importance of supportive partners. The irony is too perfect to waste on a private conversation. I turned back to address the crowd of graduates and families. Here's what Dr. Chen's speech didn't tell you about the sacrifices that supportive partners make, I said. Sometimes you sacrifice so much that when your partner achieves their dreams, they've literally outgrown their need for you. Sometimes you support someone's education so completely that they start to see you as an employee rather than a partner. That's not fair, Marcus protested. What's not fair, Marcus, is waiting until your graduation ceremony to tell me that our 6-year relationship was just a support system that you're now ready to discard. I looked around the crowd, making eye contact with several family members who were obviously processing their own relationships with the medical students they'd been supporting. What's not fair is giving a speech about the importance of supportive people in your life while planning to dump the most supportive person in yours. Rebecca, you're twisting everything, Marcus said desperately. Am I? I asked. Then let me ask you a direct question, Marcus, in front of all these people who just heard your speech about partnership and sacrifice. I stepped back slightly so the entire crowd could see both of us clearly. If I hadn't supported you financially for 6 years, if I hadn't worked double shifts to pay for your living expenses, if I hadn't sacrificed my own career advancement to help you focus on medical school, would you still be graduating today? Marcus was trapped. Any answer he gave would either acknowledge my contributions or make him look ungrateful and dishonest. That's not a fair question, he said weakly. It's the only question that matters, I replied. And your non-answer tells everyone here exactly what they need to know about your character and your integrity. I turned to Dr. Williams one final time. Dr. Williams, when you're evaluating residents and future doctors, you probably assess their clinical skills, their medical knowledge, and their ability to work with patients and colleagues. That's correct, she said cautiously. Do you also assess their personal integrity and their ability to honor commitments to people who have invested in their success? The question hung in the air like smoke, and I could see several faculty members exchanging meaningful glances. Because, I continued, if Dr. Chen's approach to personal relationships is any indication of how he handles professional obligations, you might want to keep a close eye on his residency performance. That was when Marcus finally lost his composure. You're trying to destroy my career because you're upset about a breakup, he shouted, his voice carrying across the lobby. No, Marcus, I said calmly. I'm revealing your character because you tried to destroy our relationship without consequences. And then I delivered the final blow that would ensure this graduation ceremony was remembered for all the wrong reasons. The moment Marcus accused me of trying to destroy his career, I knew I had him exactly where I wanted him. His outburst had revealed the selfishness and entitlement that I'd been gradually recognizing over the past year. But more importantly, it had given me the opening I needed to share the information that would truly expose who Marcus Chen really was. Marcus, I said, my voice becoming dangerously calm, you're right that I'm upset about the breakup, but I'm not trying to destroy your career. Your career is going to be just fine, because you're a talented doctor with excellent clinical skills. The crowd seemed confused by my sudden shift in tone, and Marcus looked suspicious about where I was heading with this apparent concession. What I'm actually upset about, I continued, is finding out 3 days ago that our entire relationship has been a lie. Marcus's face went from pale to ashen. Rebecca, don't... Oh, now you want me to stop talking? I asked. Interesting. Because 3 days ago, when I discovered the truth about your living situation for the past 8 months, I thought you might want to have a conversation about it. But you've been avoiding me all week. Dr. Williams was looking between Marcus and me with growing concern. What truth about his living situation? I smiled at Dr. Williams, appreciating her direct question. Dr. Williams, that's an excellent question. Marcus, would you like to tell everyone where you've actually been living since September, or should I? Rebecca, please, Marcus said, his voice now pleading rather than demanding. Since Marcus seems reluctant to share, I said, addressing the crowd, let me explain what I discovered when I went to surprise him at what I thought was his apartment 3 days ago. I pulled out my phone and showed several photos I'd taken that day. Marcus told me he was renting a studio apartment near the hospital to be closer to his clinical rotations. Said it was cheaper than commuting from our place and it would help him focus during his final year. That seems reasonable, Dr. Williams said cautiously. It would be reasonable, I agreed. Except Marcus wasn't living in a studio apartment. He was living in a luxury 2-bedroom condo in Lincoln Park with his girlfriend. The collective gasp from the crowd was audible. Several people pulled out their phones, probably to search for the photos and videos of this confrontation that were undoubtedly already being uploaded to social media. His girlfriend? Dr. Williams asked, her professional composure finally cracking. His other girlfriend, I clarified. Dr. Amanda Foster, a resident at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Apparently, they've been living together since September, while I've been working double shifts to pay for the apartment I thought we shared. Marcus tried one more time to control the narrative. Rebecca, that's not. Amanda and I are just friends who decided to share housing costs. Friends who share housing costs, I repeated thoughtfully. Is that what you call it when friends have joint checking accounts, joint gym memberships, and joint vacation reservations to Cabo for next month? I showed my phone screen to several people in the front row, displaying screenshots of bank statements and travel confirmations that I'd discovered when I'd finally gotten suspicious enough to investigate Marcus's recent behavior. Joint vacation reservations? Asked Dr. Sarah Martinez, one of Marcus's classmates. Marcus, what is she talking about? Marcus has been planning his post-graduation celebration vacation with Amanda for 3 months. I explained. $5,000 for a week in Cabo San Lucas, departing next Friday. Funny thing is, he told me we couldn't afford a vacation this year because he needed to save money for his residency. The crowd was becoming increasingly hostile toward Marcus, and I could see several faculty members whispering among themselves with concerned expressions. But wait, I said. There's more. Because the financial deception goes deeper than just secret apartments and secret girlfriends. Marcus looked like he might be sick. Rebecca, stop, please. Marcus, you had 6 years to stop. You had 6 years to be honest with me. You had 6 years to treat me with respect and consideration. But you chose to lie instead, and now everyone gets to hear about it. I turned to address Dr. Williams directly. Dr. Williams, are you familiar with the financial aid policies for medical students? Yes, of course. Are students required to report changes in their financial circumstances that might affect their aid eligibility? Dr. Williams was beginning to understand where I was going with this line of questioning. Yes, students are required to report significant changes in income or support. And what happens if a student fails to report changes, or if they provide false information about their financial circumstances? That would be considered fraud, Dr. Williams said slowly, and could result in the loss of financial aid and potentially expulsion from the program. I smiled and pulled out another set of documents from my purse. Marcus, would you like to explain to Dr. E. Williams how you've been reporting your financial circumstances for the past 3 years? Marcus was no longer just pale. He looked genuinely panicked. Rebecca, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. For the past 3 years, Marcus has been reporting to the financial aid office that he has no significant sources of financial support and that he's struggling to meet basic living expenses. I handed the documents to Dr. Williams. These are copies of his financial aid applications, which I was able to access because Marcus asked me to help him organize his paperwork last year. According to these forms, Marcus has been claiming financial hardship while receiving what amounts to a full scholarship from me. Dr. Williams examined the documents with growing alarm. Dr. Chen, these applications state that you have no family support and no significant financial assistance from any source. That's correct, I said. Despite the fact that I've provided approximately $48,000 in direct financial support over the past 3 years, not including the value of housing, transportation, and domestic services. But the financial aid regulations, Dr. Williams started, require students to report any financial support over $600 per year, I finished. Marcus has been receiving 8 times the federal poverty level in support from me while claiming poverty to the financial aid office. The implications were sinking in for everyone present. Financial aid fraud was a serious offense that could affect not just Marcus's current degree, but his ability to practice medicine. There's more, I said, because I was determined to reveal the full scope of Marcus's deception. Marcus has also been reporting different addresses to different institutions. I pulled out more documents. His financial aid applications list our shared apartment as his primary residence, which allowed him to claim higher living expenses. But his residency applications list Amanda's Lincoln Park condo as his address, which makes him appear more established and financially stable. Dr. Martinez spoke up. Marcus, is this true? Have you been living a double life? Marcus looked around the crowd of his classmates, faculty members, and family friends, all of whom were staring at him with expressions ranging from disappointment to disgust. I can explain, he said weakly. Please do, Dr. Williams said, her voice taking on the formal tone of someone conducting an official investigation. I'd very much like to hear your explanation for these allegations. The situation is complicated, Marcus said, obviously trying to buy time to think of a plausible excuse. It's not complicated at all, I said. Marcus wanted the financial support I could provide and the social status that Amanda could provide, so he lied to both of us, lied to the financial aid office, and lied to anyone else who might interfere with his plan to have everything he wanted without consequences. I looked around at the crowd, many of whom were recording this conversation on their phones. The only thing that's complicated, I continued, is how Marcus planned to handle the situation after graduation. Was he going to tell me about Amanda eventually? Was he going to tell Amanda about me, or was he just going to disappear and start his residency with a clean slate? Rebecca, that's not... Marcus started. Actually, I know the answer to that question, I said, because I found Marcus's email correspondence with Amanda when I was looking through the bank records. Marcus's panic was now visible to everyone. You went through my emails? I went through our shared computer looking for financial records to help you organize your residency paperwork, I corrected. And I found very interesting emails between you and Amanda about your plans for after graduation. I pulled out printed copies of email exchanges that I'd discovered 3 days earlier. Would you like me to read some of these emails to the crowd, Marcus? Or would you prefer to explain to everyone yourself how you've been describing me to Amanda? The crowd was completely silent now, waiting to see how deep this betrayal actually went. According to these emails, I said, Marcus has been telling Amanda that I'm an overly attached ex-girlfriend who doesn't understand that our relationship ended months ago. The crowd's reaction was immediate and negative. Several people began talking angrily among themselves, and I could see some of Marcus's classmates shaking their heads in disgust. Overly attached ex-girlfriend, I repeated. That's how Marcus described the woman who has been paying his rent for 6 years. And that's when I delivered the revelation that would ensure Marcus's reputation would never recover. The silence in the hospital lobby was so profound that I could hear individual conversations from other areas of the building. 300 people were hanging on my every word, waiting to hear what additional revelations I might have about the man they'd just watched give an inspirational speech about integrity and gratitude. Marcus, I said, holding up the printed emails, would you like to tell everyone what you wrote to Amanda about our relationship status over the past 8 months? Or should I just read directly from your correspondence? Marcus looked like he was about to faint. Rebecca, please don't do this. Oh, now you're concerned about public embarrassment? I asked. How interesting. Because according to these emails, you've been quite comfortable discussing our private relationship with Amanda. I held up the first email and began reading aloud. Amanda, don't worry about Rebecca. She's been useful for financial support during medical school, but she's becoming clingy and possessive. I'm planning to end things after graduation when I won't need her help anymore. The crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral. Several people gasped audibly, and I could see Marcus's classmates looking at him with expressions of pure disgust. Useful for financial support, I repeated, letting the words sink in. Dr. Williams, does that sound like the kind of language someone uses to describe a loving partnership? Dr. Williams was staring at Marcus with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Professional disappointment mixed with personal revulsion. Dr. Chen, she said, her voice taking on the formal tone of an official reprimand. These allegations are extremely serious. If true, they suggest both financial aid fraud and a pattern of deceptive behavior that raises questions about your fitness for medical practice. Dr. Williams, I said, I'm not finished with the email correspondence. I held up another printed page. This one is from 6 weeks ago. Amanda, Rebecca is asking questions about my living situation and my post-graduation plans. I think she's getting suspicious. Can you help me come up with a story about why I've been spending so much time at the hospital? The crowd was becoming increasingly agitated, and I could see several people recording everything with their phones. This graduation ceremony was going to be remembered for all the wrong reasons. And here's my personal favorite, I said, holding up a third email, from 3 weeks ago. Amanda, I've figured out how to handle the Rebecca situation. I'm going to break up with her at the graduation ceremony. She won't be able to make a scene in front of everyone, so it should be quick and clean. After that, we can start our life together without any complications. The collective intake of breath from the crowd was audible. Marcus had not only planned to blindside me with a public breakup, but he'd strategized about it with his other girlfriend, calculating that I would be too polite or too shocked to respond appropriately. Quick and clean, I repeated, savoring the irony. That was your plan, Marcus? To ambush me at your graduation ceremony because you thought I'd be too embarrassed to defend myself? Marcus was frantically looking around the crowd, probably hoping to find a supportive face or an escape route. Instead, he was seeing 300 people who now understood exactly what kind of person he really was. Rebecca, you're taking these emails out of context, he said desperately. Out of context? I asked. Marcus, you literally wrote to Amanda about using me for financial support and then discarding me when you didn't need me anymore. What context could possibly make that acceptable? Dr. Williams stepped forward, her expression grave. Dr. Chen, I'm going to need to see all of this documentation. These allegations suggest serious violations of both financial aid regulations and professional conduct standards. Dr. Williams, there's one more thing you should know, I said, pulling out the final set of documents I'd prepared. Marcus didn't just lie about his financial circumstances and relationship status. He also lied about his academic performance. Marcus's face went from pale to green. Rebecca, no. For the past 2 years, Marcus has been tutoring undergraduate pre-med students for cash, I said, completely unreported income that he's been using to fund his lifestyle with Amanda. I handed Dr. Williams a folder containing bank records, tutoring contracts, and payment receipts. Approximately $18,000 over 2 years, none of which was reported to the Financial Aid Office or the IRS. Dr. Williams examined the documents with growing concern. Dr. Chen, is this accurate? Have you been receiving unreported income while claiming financial hardship? Marcus was trapped, and he knew it. Any answer he gave would either be an admission of fraud or an obvious lie that could be easily disproven. The tutoring was just occasional help for friends, he said weakly. Occasional help for friends doesn't generate $18,000 in documented income, I replied. And friends don't usually pay you through formal tutoring services that require tax reporting. Dr. Sarah Martinez, who had been listening to this entire confrontation with growing horror, finally spoke up. Marcus, I can't believe this. How could you lie to everyone who supported you? And how could you lie to Rebecca for 6 years while she was supporting your education? Added Dr. James Wilson, another classmate. The tide had turned completely. Marcus's own classmates were now confronting him publicly, and I could see faculty members whispering among themselves with obvious concern about what they were hearing. Dr. Williams, I said, I want to be clear about something. I'm not here to destroy Marcus's medical career out of spite. I'm here because his behavior represents a pattern of deception that raises serious questions about his character and professional ethics. Dr. Williams nodded grimly. Ms. Rebecca Martinez, I said. And Dr. Williams, there's one final thing that I think the medical school administration should know about Dr. Chen's approach to professional relationships. Marcus looked like he might collapse. Rebecca, please, I'm begging you. Marcus, you had 6 years to treat me with honesty and respect, I said. You chose deception instead. Now everyone gets to see the consequences of that choice. I pulled out my phone and opened a voice recording app. 3 days ago, when I confronted Marcus about the apartment and Amanda, I recorded our conversation. Would you like to hear what he said when I asked him to explain his behavior? The crowd was completely silent, and I could see people leaning forward to catch every word. This is Marcus's voice, I said, hitting play on the recording. Listen carefully. Marcus's voice came through my phone speaker, clear and unmistakable. Rebecca, you have to understand. Medical school is competitive. I did what I had to do to succeed. You were a resource that I needed, and Amanda is a connection that I need for my career. I never lied to you, I just didn't tell you everything. The crowd's reaction was immediate and explosive. Several people began talking angrily, and I could see Marcus's family members, his parents, who had flown in from California for his graduation, staring at him with shock and disappointment. A resource, I said, letting the word hang in the air. That's how Dr. Chen describes a 6-year relationship with someone who sacrificed her financial security for his education. I continued playing the recording. Rebecca, you're being dramatic. Lots of medical students have complex personal situations. The important thing is that I'm graduating and starting my residency. Everything else is just details. Details, I repeated. Financial fraud, relationship fraud, and academic dishonesty are just details. Dr. Williams was taking notes furiously, and I could see several other faculty members doing the same. This was no longer just a personal drama. It was becoming an official investigation. Dr. Chen, Dr. Williams said, her voice now carrying the full authority of her position. You will need to report to my office first thing Monday morning with all documentation related to these allegations. Pending investigation, your residency placement may be subject to review. My residency? Marcus asked, panic evident in his voice. Dr. Williams, you can't punish me professionally for personal relationship issues. Financial aid fraud isn't a personal relationship issue, Dr. Williams replied sternly. Unreported income isn't a personal relationship issue. Providing false information to the medical school administration isn't a personal relationship issue. I stepped forward to address the crowd one final time. I want everyone here to understand something important. I didn't come here today planning to destroy Marcus's reputation. I came here to celebrate his graduation, believing that we were starting our life together. I looked around at the faces in the crowd, some sympathetic, some angry, all of them riveted by what they'd witnessed. But when Marcus chose to end our relationship by whispering, "We're done," while hugging me at his graduation ceremony, he made a calculation. He thought I would be too polite, too shocked, or too embarrassed to respond appropriately. I smiled, feeling a sense of satisfaction I hadn't expected. What Marcus didn't account for is that after 6 years of supporting someone's education and career, You learn a lot about research, documentation, and presentation of evidence. The crowd actually laughed at that, and I could see several people nodding in appreciation. Marcus thought he could use this public setting to control my reaction to his betrayal, I continued. Instead, he gave me the perfect audience to reveal exactly who he really is. Dr. Martinez spoke up again. Rebecca, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Marcus, I'm ashamed to call you a classmate. Several other graduates echoed her sentiment, and I could see Marcus's isolation becoming complete. His own classmates were publicly distancing themselves from him. Dr. Williams, I said, I have copies of all this documentation for the medical school's records. I also have contact information for several other women who have had concerning experiences with Dr. Chen during his clinical rotations. Marcus's eyes went wide. What other women? Women who reached out to me after I started asking questions about your behavior, I replied. Apparently, your pattern of using people for personal gain extends beyond just romantic relationships. I handed Dr. Williams a final folder. Nurse practitioners, residents, and medical students who have reported inappropriate behavior from Dr. Chen during clinical rotations. Behavior that includes taking credit for their work, manipulating their schedules for his convenience, and making them uncomfortable with personal questions about their financial situations. The implications were staggering. Marcus hadn't just deceived me. He'd been using his position as a medical student to exploit and manipulate other healthcare professionals. Dr. Chen, Dr. Williams said, her voice now ice cold, you will report to my office Monday morning at 8 a.m. You will bring legal representation, and you will prepare to answer questions about all of these allegations under oath. She turned to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption to our graduation celebration. The medical school takes these allegations extremely seriously and will conduct a full investigation. As the crowd began to disperse, many people approached me to offer support and congratulations for standing up for myself. Marcus's classmates, in particular, seemed eager to distance themselves from him and express their admiration for my courage. Rebecca, said Dr. Martinez, what you did today was incredible. Marcus deserved to be exposed, and you did it with class and documentation. Thank you, I said. I just wanted people to know the truth. As I prepared to leave, I turned back to see Marcus standing alone in the center of the lobby, his graduation gown wrinkled and his face pale with shock. His parents were walking away from him, clearly too disgusted to continue the conversation. Amanda was nowhere to be seen. Apparently, she'd disappeared when the truth about their relationship had been revealed. Marcus caught my eye one final time, and I could see him mouth the words, I'm sorry. I walked over to him, and for a moment, the crowd quieted to hear what I might say. Marcus, I said, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. 6 years ago, I believed in your dreams because I thought they were our dreams. I supported your education because I thought we were building a future together. I paused, looking around at the crowd that was still listening. What I learned today is that the most important lesson medical school teaches isn't anatomy or pharmacology. It's character. And unfortunately, that's a subject you failed. With that, I turned and walked out of Northwestern Memorial Hospital, leaving Marcus to face the consequences of 6 years of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. Behind me, I could hear the crowd beginning to disperse, but I could also hear phones buzzing with notifications as the videos and photos of the confrontation were uploaded to social media. Marcus Chen's graduation day would be remembered, just not the way he'd planned. 3 months after Marcus Chen's graduation ceremony became the most talked about medical school scandal in Northwestern University's history, I was sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Chicago, scrolling through the latest updates about the investigation that had consumed the medical school's administration throughout the summer. The initial video of our confrontation had gone viral within hours of the graduation ceremony, accumulating over 2 million views on various social media platforms under hashtags like Med School Scandal and Graduation Revenge. But the real story had developed in the weeks that followed, as journalists and medical ethics investigators had dug deeper into Marcus's pattern of deception and manipulation. Dr. Patricia Williams had been true to her word about conducting a thorough investigation. Within 2 weeks of the graduation ceremony, Northwestern's medical school had launched a formal inquiry into Marcus's financial aid applications, academic conduct, and interactions with fellow students and healthcare professionals during his clinical rotations. The results had been devastating for Marcus's medical career. The financial aid investigation had confirmed every allegation I'd made at the graduation ceremony. Marcus had indeed been receiving substantial unreported income from tutoring services, while claiming financial hardship to justify need-based aid. The total amount of fraudulently obtained financial assistance was calculated at over $37,000 over 4 years. More damaging to his professional reputation were the testimonies from other healthcare workers who came forward after my public revelation. 8 different women, nurses, residents, and medical students, had reported incidents where Marcus had used his position to manipulate work schedules, take credit for their contributions, or make them uncomfortable with inappropriate personal questions. The pattern was consistent. Dr. Williams had told the Chicago Tribune during an interview about the investigation. Dr. Chen appeared to view his colleagues and personal relationships as resources to be exploited for his advancement, rather than as professional partnerships based on mutual respect. The medical school's response had been swift and comprehensive. Marcus's degree had been revoked pending the completion of the investigation. His residency placement at Northwestern Memorial had been terminated, and he'd been banned from applying to any residency program affiliated with Northwestern University's medical system. But the consequences had extended far beyond just Northwestern. The story had been covered extensively in medical journals and professional publications, making Marcus's name synonymous with academic fraud and professional misconduct throughout the medical community. Medical schools nationwide are reviewing their financial aid verification procedures and professional conduct monitoring systems as a result of the Chen case, reported the Journal of Medical Education in a comprehensive analysis of the scandal's implications for medical education oversight. The ripple effects had been profound for everyone involved. Amanda Foster, Marcus's other girlfriend, had faced her own professional consequences when it was revealed that she had been aware of his deceptive behavior and had actively helped him conceal his relationship with me from mutual colleagues. Dr. Foster's residency status is under review, Northwestern Memorial's chief of staff had announced. Healthcare professionals are expected to maintain the highest standards of personal and professional integrity, and Dr. Foster's involvement in Dr. Chen's deceptive behavior raises serious questions about her judgment and character. For me, the aftermath had been surprisingly positive. The viral video had led to interview requests from major news outlets, speaking opportunities at nursing conferences, and job offers from hospitals that had been impressed by my courage in exposing professional misconduct. Rebecca Martinez represents everything that's right about healthcare professionals, said Dr. Maria Santos, chief nursing officer at Chicago General Hospital, where I'd been working double shifts to support Marcus's education. Her willingness to speak truth to power, even at personal cost, demonstrates the kind of integrity we want to see in all healthcare workers. Chicago General had offered me a promotion to nursing supervisor with a substantial salary increase, recognizing both my clinical skills and my demonstrated leadership during a difficult personal situation. Ms. Martinez showed remarkable composure and documentation skills while exposing serious professional misconduct, said hospital administrator Robert Chen. Those are exactly the qualities we want in our nursing leadership team. The promotion had allowed me to pay off the credit card debt I'd accumulated supporting Marcus's education within 2 months, and for the first time in 6 years, I was able to focus on my own career advancement rather than someone else's educational goals. The speaking opportunities had been even more rewarding. Nursing schools across the country had invited me to speak about professional ethics, personal boundaries, and the importance of maintaining your own integrity even when supporting someone else's dreams. Your story resonates with healthcare workers because so many of us have made sacrifices for partners, colleagues, or family members who took our support for granted, said Dr. Jennifer Williams, Dean of Nursing at DePaul University, after I'd spoken to her graduating class. The lesson isn't that we shouldn't support each other. It's that we should demand the same level of integrity from others that we demonstrate ourselves. The response from young nurses and nursing students had been particularly gratifying. Many had shared their own stories of being taken advantage of by partners, family members, or colleagues who had exploited their caring nature and professional dedication. Rebecca, your willingness to stand up for yourself publicly has inspired me to set better boundaries in my own relationships, one nursing student had written after hearing me speak. I was letting my boyfriend take advantage of my income and schedule flexibility, but your story helped me realize that real partnerships require mutual respect and contribution. The broader impact on medical education had been significant as well. Northwestern and several other medical schools had implemented new policies requiring more detailed documentation of students' financial circumstances, including regular verification of reported income and support sources. The Chen case highlighted gaps in our oversight systems that allowed serious misconduct to continue undetected for years, Dr. Williams had explained during a conference presentation about the new policies. We've implemented much more robust monitoring and verification procedures to prevent similar situations in the future. Professional associations had also taken notice. The American Medical Association had used Marcus's case as an example in updated ethics training materials, and several state medical boards had revised their character and fitness evaluation procedures for medical license applications. The Chen case demonstrates why professional integrity must be evaluated alongside clinical competence, said Dr. Richard Hartwell, president of the Illinois State Medical Board. Physicians who demonstrate patterns of deception and manipulation in their personal relationships pose risks to patients and colleagues that extend far beyond their technical medical skills. 6 months after the graduation ceremony, I received a call from Dr. Williams requesting a meeting to discuss the final resolution of Marcus's case. Ms. Martinez, Dr. Williams said when I arrived at her office, I wanted to update you personally on the conclusion of our investigation and to thank you for your courage in bringing these issues to our attention. What was the final outcome? I asked. Dr. Chen's medical degree has been permanently revoked, Dr. Williams replied. He will be required to repay all fraudulently obtained financial aid, plus penalties and interest, totaling approximately $53,000. He is permanently banned from applying to any medical school or residency program in the United States. The finality of it was striking. 6 years of medical education, 4 years of undergraduate preparation, and a lifetime dream of becoming a doctor, all destroyed by the pattern of deception and manipulation that I had exposed at his graduation ceremony. Dr. Williams, I want you to know that I never intended for the consequences to be this severe, I said. I was angry and hurt, but I didn't set out to destroy his entire career. Dr. Williams leaned back in her chair, studying me with the same careful attention she'd shown during the graduation ceremony confrontation. Ms. Martinez, Dr. Chen destroyed his own career through his choices and actions over a period of years. You simply provided the documentation and testimony that allowed us to see the full scope of his misconduct. She paused, pulling out a file folder from her desk. What you may not know is that your decision to speak up publicly has prevented Dr. Chen from potentially harming patients and colleagues as a practicing physician. What do you mean? Dr. Williams opened the folder and showed me additional reports that had emerged during the investigation. After your public revelation, we received reports from clinical sites where Dr. Chen had completed rotations. Multiple supervisors reported incidents where he had falsified patient records, taken credit for other residents' work, and demonstrated concerning attitudes toward patient consent and professional boundaries. The implications were sobering. Marcus's pattern of deception and manipulation hadn't been limited to personal relationships. It had extended to his professional responsibilities as well. Ms. Martinez, your willingness to confront Dr. Chen publicly prevented him from entering medical practice where his character defects could have had serious consequences for patient safety and professional standards. As I left Dr. Williams' office, I reflected on the unexpected trajectory my life had taken since that devastating whisper at Marcus's graduation ceremony. What had started as a moment of personal betrayal had become a defining experience that had strengthened my career, clarified my values, and demonstrated the power of standing up for truth even in difficult circumstances. A year later, I was offered a position as Director of Nursing Ethics at Chicago General Hospital, a role that involved training healthcare professionals about professional boundaries, ethical decision-making, and the importance of maintaining integrity in both personal and professional relationships. Rebecca, your experience and insights about professional conduct make you uniquely qualified for this position, said the hospital's chief administrator during my interview. Your willingness to speak truth to power, even at personal cost, demonstrates exactly the kind of leadership we need in healthcare ethics. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus's attempt to quietly discard me after using me to achieve his dreams had resulted in my own professional advancement and recognition as a leader in healthcare ethics. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well and using your experience to help others avoid similar exploitation. And sometimes, when someone whispers, "We're done," at their moment of triumph, the best response is to make sure everyone understands exactly what they're really done with and what they've lost in the process. Marcus Chen had been right about one thing. We were done. But he'd been wrong about who would suffer the consequences of that ending. As I settled into my new role training healthcare professionals about ethics and integrity, I often thought about that moment in the hospital lobby when I'd made the split-second decision to respond to his whispered betrayal with a public revelation of truth. It had been the best decision of my professional life, and the moment that taught me the most important lesson I'd ever learned. Your integrity is worth more than anyone else's dreams, and protecting it publicly is sometimes the only way to ensure it survives privately. Marcus had whispered his betrayal, thinking the setting would silence my response. Instead, it had given me the perfect audience to ensure his true character was heard by everyone who needed to know.